So what we're covering today are tools for doing printed reports out of CIOC. There are two main ways that this is used in CIOC, and I'm going to cover both of them. But one is just very simple way of redisplaying the information that you normally see in CIOC, and the other is a tool meant to put together more complex publications. So that's the one I expect more commentary on, but we'll go through both. I have a short list of to-dos for this particular area of the software, and I'm really looking for some feedback today about what else, above and beyond what we've already identified, you would like to see in these tools. Okay. Clearing out my questions here so I know if I have any new ones. So we'll start off with discussing what the two things are, the two areas I just talked about. The first, which is the simple one, are what we call print templates. For those of you who've done any setup work in the software, you're familiar with the area called the design templates. The design templates decide what your top menus look like, what colors you're using, what fonts you're using, and so on. And one kind of design template that you can set up is what we call a print template. There is fundamentally no difference between a print template and a regular design template. And in fact, you can reuse your regular design template as your print template if that's what you wish to do. But you have the option in any view that you set up to have a different regular template for searching and display of records, and print template, which is specifically for formatting your information for doing an actual printout from the software. When you go into print mode, a couple of things happen. One, it uses your print template, which is obvious, but the other thing that it does is strip out any automated menu items or links to make the display a little bit more compact. I'll try and demonstrate that here. I believe I have a print template set up. If you have a print template set up in your view, you will see this little print version icon, which redisplays the same content that you were just looking at in a new window. So you can see it's exactly the same search result, but what has it done? In my case, I have a print template set up which has no menu. So you can see how much has been stripped away, but not just the menu from my template. Note that all the information, your change display options, your drop-down menu here, all of the quick links menu, all of that extraneous information is automatically stripped out from the software, as well as any links within the details of what you're displaying. So if I look at my search results here, all of these links have been turned into plain text and no longer show as links. And that would be true with any of the fields that you added if you had if you were showing your list of subjects, for example, and your list of subjects was what we call web-enabled, meaning that it links to new search results. If you did a print version and click that print version new window, it would take all of the links out of that information so that it's designed specifically for printing. If I had used the same template, meaning I had not made a special print template but just used my regular one, then all my menu would continue to show, but it would still strip out all the links. It would still strip out my quick links, my select a letter, change display options, action, anything that has to do with an action you take, because that's really irrelevant to someone who's trying to print the information. Print templates are not available on every page of the software. And in fact, even if you know the little trick for creating a print version, which I'll show you right now, is print mode equals on. That's the amazing trick for turning a page into print mode. The software actually forbids you from going into print mode on pages other than designated pages. So this doesn't work on every page in the software. We selectively choose the pages for which we deal with print mode. That matters because in order to strip the things out or take the links away, we have to have made that page ready for display in print mode. Okay, so it's not as simple as just having it work on every page in the software. We have to intentionally decide to make a page of the software available in print mode. All right, so if you do try and turn this on a page where you don't see that print version link, it's not going to work properly. So the pages we do have it available on are your search results, your record display, most of the reports pages like your statistical reports, and things like that are all, there is all a print version for. And they all look the same, print version, new window with this little printer icon, so that you can see it consistently. Any questions about print templates or what they are for? Fundamentally, it's take an existing page of the software and display it in a more print-friendly fashion. That's it. Very simple. If you want to make it available to the public, you can. Note that you have to turn on a special flag in your general setup options to make print templates available to the public. One question here. Sharon is asking, is there a list of what pages have print templates? I can easily put that together because it's in one place in the software where I have a list of the types of pages that it will work with print mode. So if you would like to have that list, I can certainly easily put that together. But I don't have it documented right now. Okay. All right, so the next tool, which is the more complex one, is what we'll call our multi-record printing tool and printing with indexes. So this is completely separate from print templates, totally different tool and not at all related. And we do get a little bit of confusion, I think, between the two for people who aren't experienced in setting them up, understanding that these are completely different functions in the software, not related at all. Our multi-record printing works only on a selection of records, either in the volunteer software or in the community information software. And instead of setting up a template, what you are setting up is called a print profile. A print profile selects specific fields and also can have things like a style sheet, which determine the look and feel of the information that you were printing. Okay, so very distinct from print template. It's whereas the print template relies on whatever you normally see in the software. Our multi-record printing tool, the print profiles, have nothing to do with regular display areas of the software. I'm going to use our CIOC test site to have a little bit of a peek at print templates, or print profiles, pardon me. I'm mixing them up myself. Ooh, I've got a lot. Okay, so this is what the current setup of a print profile looks like. I mentioned style sheets. There are 3 style sheets that ship with the software. I believe there's 3. It's 2. If you go into your page help, it talks about the print templates. Here we go. The print style sheets that ship with your software and how to use them, so that if you do not have CSS skills, that you would still be able to make use of the ones that we provide for you. But the reality we have is, in order to do really nice, fancy printed reports in CIOC, you need to know how to do basic web design. And that is obviously in my list of recommendations, because that presents a problem to some of our users who do not have that skill set. Okay. To do a basic print report, you do not need it. But if you need to do anything fancy, everything is done with HTML and CSS. So there's a certain level of knowledge expected there. Because this is multi-record printing, one of the options is the ability to put a separator between records. This could be just a simple line break, which is what my BR is here. Or it could be an actual solid line or text in between, or whatever it is that you want to have in between 2 records. You'll notice there's a little checkbox here, start each record on a new page when printing. That only applies if you're printing from your browser. There's a little instruction that we can give the browser to say start a new page. That doesn't carry over if you save your output and bring it open in another product like Word. Okay? And then we have headers and footers, just like the design that we have in our template, where you can add the equivalent of a menu, something that happens before your printout and something that happens at the end of your printout. There's also the ability to put in a message that you can customize at the time you run the report. That's why we call it the default message. So it's what you have by default, but at the time you run the report, you have the ability to customize this message. And you can decide whether or not the message is printed once at the top of the report or before each and every record that gets printed. So if you want to ensure that every record that you print starts on its own page and always has a disclaimer printed at the top, then you could say, start each one on a new page and put my message at the top of every single record that's run. And then you would be assured that each and every one of your record printouts had the disclaimer on it. Finally, the way we control access to print reports is by view. So in every print profile that you create, you have to say that it's available in a particular view in order for people to actually be able to use this print profile. So it's not enough to create it. You actually have to assign it to specific views, and then anyone using that view would have access to it. One of the challenges is we do not have any ability to do this for the public. So the public currently has no access to the multi-record printing. The next section is the Manage Field section, which is large and a little bit cumbersome, but it allows you to set up a few different kinds of fields. We'll call them I'll go to the bottom and explain what each one is. There's 4 kinds of fields. One is called a heading, a basic, a full width, and a continuation. A heading is just what it sounds like. It prints as an HTML heading. A basic prints the name of the field in a side box like this, and the content of the field in a box next to it. So just like you might expect a basic printout to be. A full width prints the title above the contents of the field, and the field will take up both columns. So if you had a very long description, it would print description, and then right underneath it would indent again all the way, or it would not indent, it would go all the way to the left and use the entire width instead of being indented in and starting the description here to the right of the field label. So question. Sharon is saying on the volunteer side, when they print a volunteer opportunity using the print page feature, all of the links are converted to simple text, no links. How can this be corrected? So Sharon, you're using a print template, not a print profile. If you're printing from the content of your record, and that's part of what that does. It prints links. Because if you're printing, then having links doesn't help. When someone is looking at a printout, it actually makes the text harder to read. So that's a feature. Is there a reason why you want to keep the links in on a print version? I'll go into a record so I can explain that a little further. So here I am looking at my record, and if I go, here I have links, distribution is linked, and so on. My website address here is linked and all of that, and if I click Print Version New Window, all the links are taken out, so the content is still there, but the underlining has gone away. Is that what you mean, Sharon? So if you want to keep the links, don't use a print version. Save the regular version. That's about all I can say. Is the print version is intended for actual printing on paper, and the need that you're expressing is a different one. So that's about the only response that I can give you. What I would do in your situation is actually use our temporary view switch, which some people take advantage of. It still leaves the menu in, but you can minimize it. So beyond doing a print version, you can do the change view temporary. So I can actually switch to the public view, let's say, and just save this version, which has just the fields that I've picked, but it doesn't take any of the links away. The challenge is it's going to leave in all the menu information. It's going to leave, you know, the first, next, last, etc. but the removal of links is intentional. It serves a purpose, so that's why it does that. That's about all I can say. So, I mean, I guess that we could have a configuration option to have it not strip links out, but that's challenging because which links are we going to leave in and which links are we not? Are we still going to strip the menu out? And if you're not going to strip those things out, then a print version isn't what you want. You want to just save the page as is and not do a print version. You're better off to make another view that has the fields that you want and just do a switch when you go to save it using this change view temporary. Okay, so back to, let me go back to my setup here. So I'll demonstrate what each of these look like, but a continuation means that I'm going to combine multiple different fields into one. I'm not going to get into any further detail on that just yet because I want to take an opportunity to show you a bit about what actually running the profiles is like. First of all, are there any questions about what these tools are for or the distinction between one tool and the other? So the one that Sharon was talking about is our print template versus the one I'm talking about with setting up with the print profile is for doing multiple records in one report, and that's our print profile tool, the multi-record printing tool. Okay. So I should mention that our multi-record printing tool is also designed to not just to output printing from your browser, but also to convert into Microsoft Word for you to work with it further. So you'll notice several places where you're working with that tool where it will ask you if you prefer to optimize for your browser or Microsoft Word. All right, I'm going to take a moment and go to actually running the print profile. It's done from your main manual. You'll see an item called Print Records. This is the same in Volunteer and in CIC. The difference between Volunteer and CIC is that the CIC section has an index section, what we call a name index and a subject index. So the ability to basically create a reference section for a directory where you could look up what the record number would be in your publication for either by the name of the organization, including alternate names, former names, and so on, or a subject index where you have classified these records by general heading and create a report referencing the number within the publication. When you want to run a multi-record print report, you can either do it from that main menu, pick a profile, and then pick the records to print based on publication code, or from your search results, you can also select specific records to run through your report. One of the things that you have to do in order to make use of the index sections of this is have a print profile that includes the numbering of the record. So within the setup, there's a special code that you can put in that inserts a record number, a sequential record number starting at 1 for all the records that are going to appear in your printout. So it would number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 according to just the records that you had selected for that report. That then ties into your name index and your subject index. It will reference those numbers to be able to see what that looks like. So I'm going to run, I think, see if I can find one here to run. So this is an example of what a subject index looks like. It's based on a very particular publication code, so that's the important thing to get out of this. The publication called Hamilton Mock Directory, and in order to match it together with a print report, I would also have to pick Hamilton Mock Directory to select my records. Okay, so here I am. I've run Hamilton Mock Directory from as a regular print tool, and you can see I've got the numbering in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So all of these would then match up with my subject index. If I say this record is number 14, if I then go and look in this list for number 14, it should be the same. And so it's really critical that they be exactly the same publication in order for these two things to match up, and they have to be run at the same time, because as you add and remove records from the publication, it can renumber them. And the same holds true for the name index, where again I can pick the same publication, Hamilton Mock Directory. Say I want to include email and, yeah, just email, let's say. And there's no emails, that's great. If I had, there's a blank space here where the email addresses would occur, but none of these records have emails, so that's helpful. And it does the same listing with the numbers that coordinate with the particular record in Hamilton Mock Directory. So it has to tie one to the other to the other. If you don't use the same publication for all three, they won't match up. That's the basic tool. So you can print record data, you can multiple records at a time, you can create a subject index, which is based on general headings, and you can create a name index, which may or may not include things like phone number, email, fax, and so on. That's the basics of the tool. Can I ask, of those on the call, what is the general experience level with these tools? Because, I mean, I could spend hours explaining how they work, but I don't have a sense of how many of you have experience using the tool. Understanding that the volunteer side doesn't have name and subject index, so I don't expect you to understand how those work. But do you currently use print profiles, or who has never used them or set one up? Okay. So we do have at least some people who have never set one up. Okay, a number of people who've never set one up. Okay, so what I would say generally is to watch the video because it really does take a few hours to explain how all of these tools work. I'll try and give a really broad summary here. The major issue we have here is setting one up takes a really long time and is fiddly. It's not intuitive. It's powerful in that you can do a lot of tweaking and deciding how things are going to display. And once it's set up, it's set up. And so running the reports is very easy. The challenge that we generally have had is that people have a struggle setting it up in the first place and understanding how that process works. So we've made a tool that does a lot of things, but requires a lot of knowledge in order to do those things. Would you say, Hamilton is saying that basically they use it, it's difficult to set up, but once they're set up, they're easy to use. That's pretty much our feeling about how this tool works right now. So with the thought to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think we need to do with the tool. I'm trying to figure out how much more I should let you know about what it does. So, okay. So I guess a little bit more about what it does. I showed you how you could, or I explained to you that you could pick various fields to add to your report and decide what the format of those fields would be. So I'm going to take a minute here and show you what some of those look like in this particular report. This is a heading field. Okay. I have styled it to have these bars in this particular font and so on. But that's fundamentally what it is. This is a basic field, so it has the label of the field, and then beside it has the contents of the field. This is a full width field, meaning it doesn't have the label to the side of it. It has, it's printed across the entire width. And here we have an example of a continuation field. It starts with a regular field called phone fax that adds the regular office phone number, and then it continues with toll-free and fax, which all appears in one section. Okay, so that's the demonstration of the 4 types. We have a heading, a basic field, which is the label of the field, and then the content of the field. Here again, we have a basic field followed by 2 continuations. So the basic field is the phone fax, which prints the office phone number, and then it continues. It has a continuation field of toll-free phone and another continuation field of fax. And that allows you to print the values of multiple fields, one after another, without reprinting a label for them. You can separate continuation fields by anything you want. So in this case, I've done it with a new line. Each of these fields are on their own new line. But in other cases, you could separate them by semicolon. And you can, here I'm printing out a label next to each one. Right, I say toll-free and fax, but you don't have to do that either. So I could actually just list them semicolon separated and not have any label in between them at all. There's a huge amount of customization. The other thing I want to highlight here is that you have some options about manipulating your data before it's printed. So here we see address that says no street address. You can actually say what to do with the field if there's nothing in it. In this case, what I've said is anytime there's not a street address, I want you to print the words no street address. I could also say, you know, put mailing address here, and if there's no mailing address, to use site address. So you can say, try and use this field. If there's nothing in it, use this other field instead. I can also make substitutions. So let's say I wanted, every time there was the word fully accessible, I want to replace it with an image of a wheelchair. That we can do using the find and replace tools that are part of this particular tool set. Likewise, if I want to take any of the website links that might occur within the body of a description where it doesn't say where the website address goes to, obviously that is completely unhelpful when I'm doing a print report. I actually provide some examples of using our find and replace tools to take the website address out of the link and print it in brackets beside the thing that's linked so that it works for a printed report where people can't actually click on the links. All the things I'm talking about today are both covered in the video that is posted and also in the page help for setting these things up. So I'm going to go back for a moment here. We have the manage, find, and replace commands for these fields. If I go to the page help in the section, it actually talks about how you would do some of the special things I'm talking about. Like if in the content of your description you use little stars to represent bullets, it shows how I can replace that with an actual proper website bulleted list when I run my report. Here's another example of, say I have a link to Yahoo. I can actually strip that out so that it just has the text, or using this example, I leave the text but print the address of the link beside the content. So it's again, very powerful tools, but as you can see by what it's telling you to do, in order to do it, it also has a certain expectation of technical skill in order to implement it. So this is the challenge we have. Huge amount of customization, very, very powerful, not very easy to use. Okay. So having gone through that, let me just go through what I've got in my questions here. Sharon's asking, when you select email as one of the fields to put into the print profile, which email field is this pulling from? So when I checked email in the name index, that's only available on the CIC side, and would be using the CIC email field. Generally speaking, when you are setting up a profile, the field names that you pick are exactly what you have named the fields to be. So I'll go for a minute to, I'll do setup. I'll actually go into volunteer profiles this time. Go into a volunteer print profile. When you set up a volunteer print profile, you have access not just to the volunteer fields, but also some of the community information fields, because obviously you want to print some information about the organization, not just the opportunity. So if I go into Manage Fields of my volunteer record, I can add a field either from the opportunity, which is up here, or from the organization. So if I was adding a new field, accessibility, from here, it would be drawing from the opportunity. And if I added the field accessibility from organization, it would be drawing from the CIC record. That's how you can distinguish between them. They have the same names as whatever you've configured them to be. So hopefully you know what all your fields do in your software and what they're for. The names are obviously decided on by you, because these are all, the names are all customized. So whatever you have labeled your fields would give you an indication of what they do. In terms of what the volunteer profile has access to, it's everything that's listed as a global field in the database. So it's actually, you'll probably have access to a little bit more than you usually have access to. Not by much, but a small amount more than what is normally available to you in that little section that gets printed on the bottom of record details, but very similar. All right. So Sharon asked, does this code work in any of the fields in CIOC? Did I answer your question? I'm not, maybe you can clarify for me, which code do you mean? The bullet codes, the HTML codes. So, no. That example that I gave in that print tool is that a lot of our members use asterisks in order to have something that looks kind of like a bulleted list. You can actually make your own HTML bulleted list in CIOC in your descriptions if you want to. But then you're committing yourself to having HTML in the middle of your description, and that makes it harder for your agencies potentially to update their information if they don't know HTML. But when you go to do the print report, if you've done little tricks like that, where you haven't actually used HTML, but instead just use little plain asterisks for a bulleted list, you can convert them into a proper HTML bulleted list for the purpose of printing, so that you have a bit more professional looking output. And you can really do anything you want with that bulleted list, because you can apply a style to it. So you could have that bulleted list have special icons, or a different font, or whatever kind of bullet that you wanted. It's all possibilities. Unfortunately, there's almost too many possibilities. The tool is very, very flexible, but you have to have the knowledge behind it in order to do it. Does that fill you in? Okay, good. All right, excellent. So, with that incredibly brief, and I apologize how brief it is, but again, we do have actually a very good training video, that incredibly brief introduction to the print tools. I want to now go into what we know is wrong with them, or what we know we need to do with them. Before I do, Kathy has had her hand up. Do you want me to unmute you, Kathy? I'll unmute you now. Did you need to ask anything, Kathy? Okay, I'm going to assume no. Oh, here, we've got a question. You don't need to save your question for later, Kathy. Honestly, you're welcome to ask now. Don't worry about interrupting me. Is there something that you wanted me to cover now? Okay. Well, I'll leave it to you if you want to type in. Okay, so Kathy's going to wait until I've covered known issues, and then we'll come back to it. And we'll unmute everybody at the end as well to have an open discussion about it. So what I'm about to go through is a combination of things we want to do and problems we're aware of. So pardon me if it's a little bit mixed in how I'm approaching it. So one thing we would like to do is have an easy and an advanced setup option. There are huge advantages to all the customization capability that we put into the tool. It means that people can really get exactly what they want if they have the expertise to tweak it. It's very, very powerful, but it's also intimidating to use and very difficult for people who don't have that, especially the HTML and CSS skill and other technical skills that go into building this profile, to do it effectively. And for people who just want to be able to put together a simple print report, it's a bit much. So what we would like to do is have an easy mode and an advanced mode, so that people who find the advanced setup options to be a bit much can use an easier mode, an easier interface to get things set up quickly without a lot of background knowledge. Ideally, you would allow people to set things up in easy mode, maybe go into advanced mode to tweak it after the fact if they had the knowledge and desire to do that. But our goal there is to make it so that people who do not have the technical skill to make fancy profiles can get something decent running quickly. To add to that, we would like to make more predefined styles. So I quickly showed that we have two what we call CSS files. They're style sheets that we included with the software for people who do not know CSS. So a way for them to have access to some kind of styling for their print report, even though they may not have anywhere to host their own style sheet file or may not have any idea what CSS is or how to use it. They can use our built-in style sheet that we've provided to them and not have to worry about creating their own CSS file, finding somewhere to put it, and so on. But we only have two. And if you don't like either of them, too bad for you. So we would like to have more than just two predefined options, but have kind of a number of different looks and designs that people could choose from that were already ready to go without people having to go and build their own custom ones. At least one of those we would like to be optimized for use in Word, because we advertise that our print tools are Word-friendly, that you can save your print report and open it up in Microsoft Word and work in it a little bit further, but we haven't made any kind of predefined style that is really intended to work as effectively as possible with Microsoft Word, and we can certainly do that. Most of the Microsoft Office products work very well with web-based content. Like what CIOC produces, you can do a lot of really neat things, bringing things in and out of Office, and HTML or web-based content, or XML. So we could potentially be taking advantage of the all of the special styles that Word understands to make our content that we produce work very well in Microsoft Word. There's an amazing number of Word features that don't actually work on the web, but you can quietly, behind the scenes, put in instructions so that when you open it in Word, magically, it makes use of all of these Word functions. And in fact, if you run any of our indexes in Word mode, when you view it online, there's no dots, what we call a dot leader from the content to the number of the record. But the second you open it in Word, suddenly you have dots. That's because we're using a hidden style that only Microsoft Word understands in order to leverage the features we want, like a dot leader, in Microsoft Word, and we can take that even farther potentially. One request we've gotten a number of times is the ability to group records under a heading. So let's say I have a small publication I'm doing for seniors, and there are a number of different topics in this publication. What people would want to see in this case is a heading about the topic, and then a list of organizations that fall under that topic, and then a heading for another topic, and a list of organizations that fall under that topic. Okay? All we have right now is you can create your list of records, and then you can separately create a list of your topics and which of those records go under which topic. What people want is a combo, so they can break it down by topic and list each record right under the topic heading instead of having a separate index. I hope that's clear. If you have any questions about what I mean about that, just let me know. We've had a number of people rumble about the possibility of using the taxonomy instead of general headings to create a subject index. It's obviously a lot of extra work to have to synchronize your general headings in addition to any of the indexing that you've done to classify records by the taxonomy. So because we only use general headings to create our topic indexes or subject indexes, people who have already classified their records in another way have to create a whole separate classification system in order to do these print reports. And that is an excessive amount of extra work. The challenge is that the taxonomy has, 8,000 odd terms that could potentially be added to these records. And that does not fit well into a classic publication. So even if we did this, we would have to give people the tools to decide which of those taxonomy headings or branches would actually appear in the report. So it may be that they would roll up a whole bunch of different taxonomy terms, and in the report they would all get grouped into one parent term instead of showing each of the individual lower level terms. Apologize to the volunteer folks for going off on a taxonomy tangent. Those who care probably know what I mean. Okay, we would like to allow public access to multi-record printing. We've added the new My List feature that allows either staff or the public to accumulate a number of records temporarily to work with. So you can say, I like this record, this record, this record. But for the public, they can't do anything with that list once they accumulate it. Staff can. Staff can send it to a print report or do all kinds of other things, but the public can't. What we would like to do is give our members the ability to say that one particular print profile is available in a public view, and that once people had accumulated records they were interested in, they could just then print them all. Say, print all, and it would create a multi-record report of them, of all the records that they had chosen. We would like people to be able to automatically go into a PDF document, potentially, instead of having to do actual paper printing. This is especially important for people who email clients who contact them and want a referral to resources by email. The ability to generate a PDF document and send that to the client is definitely a beneficial one. I have one question, just a moment. Oh, I'm saying PDF, yay. So yeah, the idea is that you wouldn't then necessarily have to go and buy some other kind of PDF software, that we would optimize our print tools to automatically create a PDF for you. You wouldn't have to do any conversion or printing to PDF. It would just automatically give you a PDF to download that you could then send to the client. All right, so we'd like to generally improve the user interface of customizing a print profile, as I mentioned before. But one of those things specifically is that the page for adding and editing fields is humongous. So this is the page. Each field that you add has about 10 different configurations, more than 10, almost a dozen different configurations just for each field. And it makes it really hard to tell overall which fields you have in your report, because you have to really scroll down to get a sense of all of the different parts of your report. What we'd like to do instead is have a nice quick list of all the fields in your report, and for each one that you want to edit, you would be able to open it up, edit it, submit it, and the rest of the time you could just see a nice compact list of fields and be able to maybe change the order or other simple things without having the giant form for every single field, because it really makes it difficult for reports where people have 20, 30 50 fields in the report, it's really unmanageable. This page is humongous. If you can imagine that one field takes up most of your page, imagine if you had 50 of them in your report. We'd like an easier ability to generate a print preview of the profile. So you can do this now because you just have two different tabs open, and while you're editing it here, you have another window in which you just keep reloading your report. I just keep hitting reload. I make my change, I come over here, I reload. I make my change, I come over here and reload. But it's not necessarily obvious to people how to do a preview. They have to be told, you know, these are the steps you would follow to set yourself up to preview the changes that you're making. So we'd like to make it at least a little more obvious to people how they would go about viewing and previewing the changes that they've made to their profile as they're making them. And this is minor, but you may have noticed when I was using the print version, the print template, it kept popping up a little window to ask me for a title. And while that can be useful sometimes it's just annoying. So here's my example, this. Okay, so sometimes I really do want a title. So sometimes I do want to add a title to the top of my report to tell the person what it is, especially because I may have lost my entire header telling me what this page is about. So sometimes you do want the ability to enter in the title, but if you don't, if you decide that's a feature you don't like and you just find the pop-up window annoying, we don't give you any ability to turn it off. So a minor thing, but something that we know is a potential change. Okay, and that's my list. I'm going to unmute everyone now, and I know it's going to be a little bit more challenging of a discussion just because people don't have a lot of experience using the tool. So if you need me to clarify something about the existing tool because you're not sure if it does X or Y, absolutely go ahead and ask me. And then any other comments you have. So I'm going to begin unmuting you now. If you want to be muted, you can remute yourself. If you are on the phone and you haven't entered an audio pin in, you will not be able to speak. What number should I call? Okay, so that's where we are now. Please feel free to use the questions typing if you can't use your audio. Okay, so we're open. Anyone who wishes to make a comment, ask a question.
Kate, it's Lillian. Can you hear me?
Yes.
When you had said one of the options was to do a topic index as opposed to the taxonomy one, where would those topics come from?
So you mean...
like you said seniors would be the topic, but instead of having to do each one separate, yeah, that one.
Okay. It would be general headings the same way it is now.
Oh,
I mean, unless you decided to do taxonomy. So these two can work together. The idea here is they're two separate ideas, but they could work together, right? One idea is that instead of having to create general headings, you could use taxonomy as the basis of your heading.
Right.
So that's one feature. And the other feature is to have the headings right in the body of your report instead of having a separate index.
Right, yeah.
So they can work together, though. The two of those two things can both happen at the same time. If you give people the ability to use taxonomy instead of headings, that would also apply in the case where you allowed people to put headings right in the body of the report.
Right, and as far as the taxonomy goes, I mean, if we said, say, let's just do it at the third level, it would be interesting just to see what that would look like, you know? Instead of trying to give people any ability to be so granular at the 5th and 6th, or maybe you'd have to do both.
I think you'd have to do both. Yeah, it would be the equivalent of each unit there. So you would have to, you may be able to say, okay, set me up at the third level, and then you would have the ability to customize and go in and tweak. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
It would default everything to the third level, and then in each individual branch, you could go in and fiddle with it.
Right. Oh, that would be so good. I'd love that one to go up higher on the list. And I just wanted to say, I think it's a wonderful idea, the making public access to the multi-record printing. I just want to say thumbs up on that one. That would be great.
I was going to make a comment, it's Leslie, about the whole business of the headings and the taxonomy and so on. The history of the headings, and the reason we have them in the first place, because they are legacy, in fact, out of our way back when systems, is because many records would have multiple subjects in them, and when you went to create a print product, if every single subject ended up being an indexed term in a printed version, your index was utterly unmanageable. It created such a comprehensiveness that it had the opposite effect of being non-helpful. And I would be concerned that the same would be true of the taxonomy, where any given record might have a whole series of taxonomy terms. It might have terms and then have linked terms. And that the capacity to distinguish out of the 7 terms you might have in a record, which of them should be part of a print index is a daunting one. And that is why the use of headings, where you actually have a thoughtful consideration of where that record belongs and you can manage it more closely, can be very helpful. So just that context I thought might be interesting.
So one of the things, I think that what we would be looking at if we looked at the taxonomy is how can we compromise those things. And so let's say we had a tool that you started off by saying, I want to roll everything up to level 3. And again, I apologize to the volunteer folks on this call. I'll try to be quick.
You know what else, Kate? I was going to suggest maybe people who aren't actually actively talking
mute
themselves, because we've got a lot of ambient noise.
And Kathy, I will get to your question. Don't worry, I see it. I will get right back to you. So if you say, let's start at level 3, roll up at level 3, but then you'd have the ability to unpick a whole branch. Say, do not publish the Y branch. And then in one particular branch where it was relevant, you could say, don't go to level 3, go to level 4. Or even to go in and pick individual terms that matter for that publication. So let's say I'm doing a recreation publication. Then I only care about maybe a dozen terms. And I can go and pick my dozen terms, and that's all it's going to use. But it still saves me the trouble of double indexing.
Actually, that business of saying these are the terms I want to use out of however many in a topic might be that might work quite nicely, in fact, yeah. One thing we found really helpful, though, also is the capacity to be able to copy the terms from one publication to another, so that you actually can leverage work you've already done on headings into another collection, because there's often kind of resonance between the two. We found that to be a hugely helpful tool.
Yeah, and for our volunteer users, the same would come into play if we allowed you to do headings which were based on your areas of interest or communities or some other means by which you classify your opportunities. So you could be leveraging the same kinds of tools for the work that you do. It would just use a different basis. So if you thought, oh, I would love to be able to put the topics and have them be the general areas of interest, or these specific areas of interest, and create a report that grouped all my opportunities based on them falling under particular areas of interest. So, if that's of interest, that's something that we can expand out into what our volunteer centers do, so that it's not completely irrelevant, this whole idea of classifying things within a print profile. But as I say, if we do this taxonomy thing, which we're talking about in a number of areas of the software, to try and save people work in doing double duty of indexing, we have to give control. Because the whole reason people have made general headings in the first place, as Leslie was saying, was the classification system had too many things. And in some cases, the kinds of reports you're running are very specialized, and you only care about certain specific topics. If I'm doing a seniors directory, I don't need to know that this particular service also runs a parent and child group, it's completely irrelevant to the publication I'm producing at that time. So you need to have some control over what gets output, otherwise using the taxonomy is useless. So if we're going to put this in place, we have to ensure that people have an ability to customize what gets put in. And it has to be reasonable, so that it can start out very simple, like roll up to level 3, or for those publications that are small where you only want maybe a dozen topics, that you can choose an option, okay, don't roll up to level 3, instead use these 12 terms, and I'm going to give them to you and only use those 12. And that would get set up in your print profile. So it's tied to the particular report you're running. All right, I have some questions here. I'm just going to go through. Kathy was indicating that the subject index was just too cumbersome to add all the general headings, and that addresses what we're talking about here of it's too much work to duplicate, just very difficult to have to first go ahead and index all your records to the classification systems that you have to do, the taxonomy, the thesaurus, and so on, and then to have to do it all over again for general headings is an excessive amount of work. And Kathy was indicating that the results are so long. Each occurrence of each heading is one new line. Yeah, pretty much. There's not a lot that we can do about that because unless you come up with a design where that didn't happen. So if you can show me what you want a report to look like, I can try and produce something that looks like that. But without an example of what you would like it to turn out like, I can't really do much. So if for any of these tools, if what they're producing isn't what you have in mind, the first step in coming to us and asking us to produce something else is to show us an example of what you would like it to look like. In your ideal world, if you're producing something, what would it look like? Show us exactly what it would look like, and then we can try and come up with a way to make that happen. So that's my answer to that. Okay. So that's our questions cleared. Anyone else have any comments, concerns, questions, anything else like that? Silence. Really huge silence. No? Okay.
I think one of the things that is, I'll just break the silence here, it's Leslie, is that for a lot of us, we have had or will have in the future a debate about the creation of directories and the use of print, generally speaking. And so how that plays out and whether in the end we actually use these kinds of tools for paper printing will likely change over time. I know for us in Hamilton, we are not doing a printed directory anymore, but we do still use the tools for the creation of PDF and for occasional smaller print lists of various kinds. But although we have a profile and index process and all the rest for our former community services directory, we actually don't print it anymore. There was not enough demand, and I'm sure others feel the same way. So it may well be that our need for these tools is altered a little bit by the reality of not producing a lot of paper.
Right. And it's certainly in my interactions with people, the move to the small publications where they're just producing a very tiny subject-specific product, and usually in electronic format like a PDF, not actually printed, is far more common than the giant directories that people did in the past. Kathy was mentioning that in Eddie-Base, their indexes didn't show the names, they showed just the numbers. So I'm going to go back to, give me a moment here, I need to go, where in here I've got this, here we go. I'll have to go all the way back to, I've got, do print records. I'm going to run I'm going to run a subject index so I can clarify what she's talking about. So when I run the subject index, it prints the subject, and then it prints the name of every single organization that falls under it, as well as what we call, see also references. So instead of actually printing the name of each of these organizations, they just printed the numbers. Is that right, Kathy? Just in a line after the topic? Yes. So that's easy, Kathy? Yes, absolutely, we could do that. If people were actually going to use that, and that was something people wanted, that's a lot easier than what we do now. Much, much easier. And that can be an option, absolutely. That's no problem. If we have an actual desire for that and people are going to use it, certainly.
The other thing I wanted to say, and maybe we'll give some ideas to folks also as to how these tools can be really quite useful, is that we found the main place we're using these tools now is for our view clients. And so we create profiles like this, not indexes and not name indexes, just the print profile itself. We make headers that are branded to the client. We put predetermined messages from them in the header and the standard footers and so on. And then their staff create a customized resource list, for example, for a client by using the select records, check, 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 and then printing out of that results list and handing it in person to a client or sending it by email to a client. So I would say our view clients are using this print tool stuff way more than we ourselves are within our internal organization.
Okay, I have that question. Just let me check. Kelly's asking what are view clients. So quite a large number of our members partner with other organizations in their communities and for a fee create their own portals. So just the records they pick, classified the way they choose, with their own design, branded as if that organization is in charge of the information, if you will. Basically, it's like them creating their own database. It looks like it belongs to them. It has, it may look like their website. It has only the resources that tie into what that organization does. So take the earlier centers would only want resources for children 0 to 6 and their parents. So that kind of a client would come in and ask for a view client or a view that had only records that were relevant for children 0 to 6 and their parents or caregivers, and it would say earlier centers on it, or the name of the organization that runs the earlier programs in that community, instead of having it branded to the information center. Does that clarify for you, Kelly? It's a pretty significant source of income for a number of our members.
And I think the important thing to say here, too, in the way that we've approached this, and we do it a lot and we hope to do even more of it, is that there's a certain amount of charge that is upfront for the work of the creation of the view, and in some cases we've done that entirely ourselves. With guidance from the client, and in other cases we've actually done a collaboration with the client where they have participated very actively in the selecting and classification of the records by us giving them both access to do that and training to know how to do it well. But the good thing about it, I have to say, the setting up end of it can be really tedious and people change their minds continuously and it's a bit of a pain. Worth it in this sense that from that point on, we charge an annual leasing fee. So once it's set up, it's sort of like raising children. You know, once they're grown up, they're pretty well on their own, but there are still a lot of rewards. And in our case, these grown-up views go on. A little tweaking, a little is necessary from time to time, but generally the hardest part of the work is writing the invoice. Because they do keep themselves going, and it's a fairly reliable and steady revenue stream that then goes on. And none of our view clients that I can think of have actually stopped paying. Like they've continued. Once they've got their view, they want to keep it, and they continue to pay every year. And we monitor for new records, put them there for them to pick if they want, and we also obviously take out things that are deleted, and we do our regular maintenance on the records, which then means that they're up to date for them too. It's for us a pretty significant revenue stream, and has more than replaced the revenue we used to get from our Red Book. Yeah, so that's it. That was a real red herring to the conversation.
Yeah. Kelly was asking how many view clients you have.
I think about 10 at this point. Sorry, I didn't mean to set the conversation off in a different direction.
So Sharon, to bring it back to the volunteer, do you see what we have and what we're talking about in terms of changes as meeting your needs as a volunteer center? Because I know we're getting a bit distracted from what the volunteer center needs in terms of indexes and so on, but I want to make sure, since this tool applies to both, that we're covering what the volunteer centers need as well.
Yeah, see, right now, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure. It's the first time I spoke, so I wanted to make sure. We're still kind of exploring some different ways that we can be sending information from the VOL module. Right now, the specific use that we have for the volunteer posting is primarily for the one-on-one consultations that we do with prospective volunteers. And that's why, like, I posed some of those questions about print views and stuff, because, you know, we just wanted to make sure that if there's any enhancements that we can look forward to. We still haven't gone the route in terms of print views for, like, say, an agency wanting to have a print view of all of their postings. We haven't gone that route just yet, and again, we're only, you know, a year and a half into using the module, so I have to put my thinking cap on a little bit more to see and maybe explore a little bit more as to what we might need on this end.
Okay. If you do end up having the time to go through the training and you have any feedback once you know how the tools work, and
yeah, I will definitely do that.
That applies to everyone on this call. If you're interested enough to go and do the training and then you have any further feedback, please let me know. Because
yeah,
I know
can I make a point for some of the new people?
Sorry?
I just want to make a point for maybe some of the new people that may not have necessarily gone through the training. When we got the VOL module back in October 2009 or September 2009, I went through all of those videos and I just, like, kind of, you know, went a little crazy and overboard and watched every single one of them. And I've actually started going back through them now, and I'm catching things that maybe didn't make sense back then as a new user that I'm catching now, going, oh, that's how that works. So I really encourage people, if you've gone through them even once before, is to take the time to go through them again, because there might be some newfound knowledge that's just sitting there.
So yeah, I do think it's hard. It's going to be hard for the people here today who haven't used the tools to make a lot of comment until you know how they work. So you know, it may be that people need to go back and really find out a little bit more about what we're doing, or maybe you can say, look, it's too complicated for me right now, so the most important thing you can do is make it easy, which is, in my opinion, pretty much the most important thing we can do, because the tool does a lot right now, but it's really difficult to set up. It takes a long time, and if people could set these things up more quickly, I think that would make a pretty huge difference to how they're used. Once they're set up, they're no work, but it's that initial setup is an investment of time.
Kate, one of the things that I noticed in the client tracker was, and this may sound unrelated, but it really isn't. In the client tracker, when it was upgraded this last time, was the capacity to share surveys with other CIOCians outside of our own group,
you're
right?
You're in the same database.
Yes, because we're in the same database. But is there any capacity in the way we're looking at things going forward to share some of the resources that some of us have made with other people in a more readily, I guess I would say?
Well, you know, to really throw you for a loop, you actually don't need to be in the same database to share data with each other. Being on the same server is enough.
No, and I know
we could actually put tools in place for you to share things to other CIOC members, even now with you in different databases. If that was a high priority, I'm kicking myself for even mentioning it because I don't want people to think that it can do more than it can. But the reality is, all of you right now use one common CIOC database that we call CIOC Shared. And a number of things that you do and utilities that you use and some of the data that is sort of basic setup information in the software is actually kept in one centralized database on the server called CIOC Shared. And in the same way that all of you use information out of CIOC Shared, we do, technically speaking, have the capacity to make information available from one member to another, even though you're in a different database. As I say, I'm almost afraid to say that because I don't want people to think that, oh, why are we making a multi-member database if you can already share records between databases? But for things like copying a profile, we could do that. Even outside of putting everybody in the same database, if that was a high priority thing that we wanted to have as a feature, we can still have that as long as you're on the same server. So it wouldn't work to say share a print profile to Ontario CIOC because that's on a completely different server somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But it would work for Peel to share their print profile with Niagara, for example.
Yeah. And how about things like headings, for instance? I guess that's a tougher one, isn't it? At least
so
it may not even make any sense. Actually, I probably take that question back because thinking about it, it doesn't make any sense.
So to clarify, I mean, you can't draw from it. You could copy it. So I'm not saying that you could directly use their print profile. I'm saying that you could, if we could make it possible for them to offer you a copy of it.
Right, and then you would adjust it to your own purposes, but it would give you a starting place.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the same way, we could make a whole bunch of print profiles available on the CIOC test site, and people would have the option to copy them out of the CIOC test site, let's say. So yes, that's possible if we decide that. But I sort of have a feeling like if we made the interface easier, if we made it easier to set up a print profile in the first place, the need to copy someone else's wouldn't be so high.
Right. And it's certainly true, I think, as well, that as in many of the things in the software that you're able to copy, I'm thinking of things like export profiles and Excel profiles, that once you have a few of them done, then creating new ones is just a snap because you just think of the one that's the closest to what you want, you copy it, and you make a few adjustments, and there you go, you've got a new one. So the investment you make up front in those initial things can carry you a really long way toward having a lot of really finely tuned special purpose tools that grew from that one little acorn that you did the first time, which was a right pain in the neck.
Yeah, but in a way that sort of that strengthens the argument to allow people to go and grab a couple of examples from somewhere else, either from another member or from the CIOC test site or whatever, to start with, and then be able to copy those and tweak them and adjust them for what their local needs are. Add fields, take fields out, you know, change the colors, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it doesn't, I don't think it's necessary, and Kelly's saying, you know what, why have everyone reinvent the wheel? And it's true. If we can, especially for the new people who don't have any profiles now and nothing to start from, if we can give them something to begin with that they can, even if we have some sort of built-in ones that you can't delete, you can just decide who can use them. But then they were always there for you to copy from as a sort of starting point.
Yeah.
That would potentially be very helpful. Sort of default built-in reports that you can't get rid of, but you can say nobody can use them if you don't actually want them to be used in your database, but they're always there for you to copy and have something to start from. That seems like a good idea. Diane, did you have a keyboard malfunction? Cat crawl across your keyboard or something? I'm not really sure what happened there. Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments, anything?
No.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, then we'll wrap it up. And again, because so many of the people on the call really don't have a lot of experience, if you want to either go through the training videos or in any other way try and get a little bit of background knowledge about the tools and then give some further feedback, that would be great. Is there sort of a general consensus that having examples or easier to use long way in making people more likely to use these tools? Is that a fair assessment?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, I don't have anything further. I was actually just checking the CIOC board because I noticed Pam was on this call, and I want to make sure she knew that there was an answer to her very strange display. But I see she's already seen the answer, so there you go. That was taking advantage of the moment.
Kelly wanted to get some feedback on why people are using the tools and what they're doing with them. So I don't know how we would really poll, what the best way would be to poll members to find out what they're doing with them now. I think Leslie's sort of given her 2 cents that most of what they use it for is for their clients who want to be able to print reports for their own clients. And I think also in Hamilton you do for your child care line and so on where you're emailing.
Yes, yes, that is completely true. Our child care folks use them a lot because we're PDFing and sending by email for virtually everybody who inquires who needs that kind of concrete information around child care. It gets either paper in the mail or PDF and it's all done using the report formats.
Kelly's asking for the 10 view clients. So their child care, so it's a combination for them. So they have certain INR lines where they have to give out information to the person. The person can't necessarily access the information themselves, especially in the case they run a child care registry where the contact information is private and they have to contact the INR service in order to get a referral. So they then would produce either a print format or a PDF format that gets emailed to the client because they can't access that information directly. There's no self-serve. And I'm sure that also would apply to in other cases where they maybe have a phone client who wants to be sent referral information either by mail or by email. Even though they're on the phone, they might get a phone number, but they want more information sent to them about a service. That would be a main reason why that kind of a report would get used.
And for walk-in folk as well, we very rarely just give people verbal information when they walk in. We usually hand them something on a piece of paper.
Leslie, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry about that. I'm bad for doing that.
We're always on the same page for some reason, so.
Yeah, and so Kelly's asking why they don't look on the public databases. It's the same, why do people phone 211? Not everybody does self-serve. I do. I won't do anything but self-serve, but in some cases this is not public information. So I gave the example of the child care registry where they can look up the service, but they can't get the contact information until they call the INR line because it contains people's private information. These are homes with children. They're not publishing the address. They're not publishing the contact information. They actually have to call the service provider to get a referral. And also, you're just going to have people who don't do self-serve. I mean, these days, that's the minority of people because we know from our stats the majority of people are doing self-serve. But you do have people who don't do self-serve. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a 211 line, right? So for those instances, there's still a potential demand. And as Kathy says, they still get people coming in and asking for print directories. It's not, even though the demand is less than it once was, it still exists. And the ability to do on-demand printing instead of always having directories on hand means you're not wasting printing resources or spending a lot of staff time in preparing these gigantic print directories. You're only producing the report as it's needed and it's always up to date.
We're saving the trees.
Yes, exactly. You're just doing it in the cases where you have to do it, and you also know that it's not sitting there getting out of date. You're not sitting there with a pile of pre-printed things that went out of date a month ago, right? The idea here is to produce these things on demand as they're required for the few people that do need it. And it is the minority, but the need still is there.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the whole on-demand printing, one of the things, frankly, that we want to do, and heaven knows I've been thinking about this for probably at least 2 years and haven't managed to pull the trigger on it yet, but one of the things that I'd like to do is to actually market a view to community agencies that would enable them to have also access to a print tool where they could fundamentally print their own directory. If they wanted a directory, print your own directory, and maybe just for the headings that were relevant to their work. So they would effectively take a community services directory collection with headings and everything in it and produce a customized and focused paper product for themselves whenever they wanted one, and they would pay us a fee for the access to do that, but we wouldn't have to be involved in the printing at all. They could do it or not do it as they like. So that's one way of using print tools, and the other is that when you do a print-on-demand kind of product, people are a lot less picky about how incredibly fancy it might be, or how it's bound, or whether it's in a special binder and all the rest of it. In other words, they'll tolerate it to have less fussing over it, and all of us who've done directories know just exactly how much fussing we do to get it just right, and the page breaks exactly where they should be, and so on. But if you do them on demand, what you might sacrifice for the ease of being able to do them like that, straight out of the browser, for example, is that it might not be quite as pretty, or the page break might not be quite as perfect as it was if you did it another way, but it's way more up to date, and people actually like it better. And they don't say, how come that page break is in the wrong place? They actually are happy because you can hand it to them and they know it's current, and you've saved paper and time, and everybody's a lot less obsessive compulsive about it than they were when they were doing 500 copies.
So Kelly's indicating, I mean, they don't have a demand for printed things, and well, that's, yeah. That'll probably vary by community and what people are used to in the community. So it may not be a useful thing for everyone. I don't know. But we definitely have at least some demand still.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Anything else to wrap it up, or are we good? Okay. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. As always, feel free to follow up with me or anyone from the development committee or the board or anything after this session. Do appreciate your ongoing feedback, and we'll probably see some of you on Monday. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Bye.
Thanks,
Goodbye,
Katie.
everybody.